Hi everyone, my name is Leah Kopke and I'm a 3D motion design freelancer. I also have a podcast where each week I cover another 3D modeling tool for Cinema 4D. Hello and welcome. These videos are meant to be a reference guide since many of the sculpting tools have settings that are the same in each one. So as you're learning the new 3D modeling brushes in this series, you can reference back here to see these settings. So this video here is a reference guide for you if you'd like to know the options for using a stencil. So just to get started off, something that I'd like you to know is that if you want your screen to look the same as mine in this video, you can change from standard mode to sculpting. And then you'll see your screen here. You can make a mesh editable or a primitive editable after you add it into your scene by pressing this button here or using the C hotkey. And then you'll see your brushes over here on the left become available. For going through the stencil settings, we're going to be using the draw brush, which is right up here as an example. So you can see the stencil settings are in this tab. And this is what we're going through today. So let's go ahead and get started. As a reference for you, you can find additional textures for sculpting inside of Cinema 4D within the asset browser here. And if you go down to presets, you can find sculpt brush presets, and if you scroll down you can find your textures in here, which are really helpful. Now a fun one that I actually found in here is that there's this one called face parts, and you can add in an eye as a stencil. And right now it's really faded on our screen. There's a lot of transparency to it. You can adjust the transparency with this transparency button here. So you can choose how much of this you're seeing on here and how much of this you're actually seeing your screen, and show this on the cube. So you can see that you can use this as a stencil to actually draw on the mesh. So now it's taking on that eye shape, which is kind of cool. And you can see that's also working on the plane here. Now the reason why I wanted to show this right now is because, okay, so we have a stamp of an eye. What if you wanted to go the other way for the other side? Maybe I'll try flipping it along the X. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing knowing which way the eye is going. So flipping along the X seems to flip it this way so that this is going one way and then the other one's going the other way. There's even a nose texture, which is kind of fun, or one for ears. So it's a fun way to sculpt. Like you get pretty much an instant nose. I mean, you can of course reshape this and smooth it out and define it a little bit more, but it's actually a pretty decent way to get a starting point with the shape of a nose, is using that stencil. And again, you can adjust the transparency here. You can adjust the angle of your texture here. You can adjust the scale. You can make it smaller if you want. You can move it to the right or the left. And up and down using this X and Y coordinates there. You can choose to tile it, and then you can tile it in the X as well as in the Y if you want to create a repeating pattern of some sort. Maybe if you're making tiles or fabric, that could make sense to give that a try. You can add in a material like before to the stencil, like the noise. But again, this works best with the legacy materials. So you can get some pretty cool effects in here. I'm gonna smooth out these noses, or maybe just remove them altogether. So that's kind of cool to know is there while sculpting faces. A lot of people like to create those elements by hand, but if you were to create a bump map of a feature that you like that you're going to use on a lot of characters, this is one way you could easily add it, like the air here. Airs can be pretty hard and time consuming to 3D model, and you could use it here and just make your life easier, which is cool. You can load a stencil preset you've already made, or save one, or just clear what you've done all together. And we were talking about stencils and that there's this option here called link stencil. Now you know what it is referring to. If you want to use this stencil with other brushes, you can. Like if you want to use this with the grab brush, but you didn't want to have to do that setup each time for each brush you switch to, you can choose link stencil, and then regardless of which other brush I click on, as long as if it has a stencil, I can reuse my stencil setup for that new brush because it's linked. And you can also link it up here. It has an icon. So that's fun to know that's there. Down here you'll see the option visible and hide during stroke. Visible will allow you to turn on and off the stencil as you're working. Hide during stroke will hide the stencil while you're drawing with a brush or using a brush. Here I'd like to go over what the gray value is when it comes to the stencil. So the best way to show that is by using it. So let's compare the gray value at 0 here, and I'll draw on my stencil. I'll actually first make sure that the strength is all the way up so that this shows up. Let's try 1000%. So that's looking good. Let's try this again. So you could see we got a nose in there with our stencil of the nose, and our gray value was at 0. What if we do the same thing over here, but with our gray value at 1? Well, that looks a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the stencil here for a moment, and we're just going to take a look at what had happened. So when the gray value was at 0, the texture was extruding a little bit more, whereas this one, it's really built more into the surface. So that's the difference of the gray value. It's just how those grayscale values are being interpreted, whether if they're being raised up or lowered, and where they are relative to the surface of which you're sculpting. So I really hope that helps you understand the gray value a little bit better. So that just about covers the settings for the stencil tab inside of Cinema 4D for sculpting. If you'd like to be notified when future episodes or videos come out, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you here next time on Ambient 3D Animations.